Rancher sat alone, with a hungry baby after his wife passed, until she knocked with full breasts. Sage Creek, Wyoming. Winter, 1879. The wind screamed across the plains, tearing through the barbed wire fences and slamming into the wooden frame of the ranch house. Snow blew sideways in thin, sharp blades, slicing the air like razors. It was the kind of cold that cracked lips and cut through wool. Inside the cabin, a baby cried. Ethan Cole stood hunched over the small cradle, eyes bloodshot, hands shaking. His thick flannel shirt was damp with sweat, despite the chill. In his arms, baby Grace screamed, her little fists clenched, her face red and scrunched with hunger and frustration. "Come on, sweetheart," he muttered, trying once again to guide the bottle of goat's milk to her lips. "Please, just a little." She turned her head and wailed louder. The bottle slipped from his fingers and rolled across the wooden floor. Ethan swore under his breath and bent to pick it up. His back ached, his arms trembled from fatigue. It had been a month since Lillian died, 1 month since the fever came in the night and took her before sunrise. Grace had been only 2 months old then. Now she was 3, and starving. She wouldn't drink the goat's milk, no matter how warm he made it, no matter how he sweetened it. Her tiny body refused. Ethan paced the floor with her, bouncing her awkwardly, whispering soft nonsense, trying not to cry. His boots thudded heavily, his hair was unwashed, his beard overgrown. He hadn't slept through a night since the funeral. He barely ate. He barely thought. Just fed fires, changed diapers, rocked, shushed, pleaded. And still, Grace cried. Last week, he had saddled his horse and ridden to every home within 10 miles. Anyone with a new baby? Anyone nursing? The answers were the same. Soft voices, gentle refusals, shaking heads. "No one's had a child in months, Ethan." "I'm sorry, son." His last stop was the church. Even the pastor looked at him with pity. "There's nothing I can do but pray." So Ethan returned home and wrote a sign in shaky, blocky letters. "Need help. Infant hungry. Breast milk needed." He nailed it to the front gate. The wind tried to tear it down. He hammered it again and again. 4 days had passed. No one came. That night, a storm rolled in. The fire in the hearth sputtered, casting flickering shadows across the room. Outside, the snow thickened, tapping the windows like bony fingers. And Grace screamed. Ethan dropped into the rocking chair by the fire, pulling her close to his chest. His big arms wrapped around her small, writhing body. He kissed her damp forehead. "I'm trying," he whispered. "I don't know what else to do." She wailed louder, her cries raw and hoarse from hours of hunger. He rocked harder, faster. "I used to be the strongest man on this ranch," he muttered, voice cracking. "Now I'm just a father with shaking hands who can't feed his own child." His eyes burned, his throat closed. The storm outside howled louder. Inside, Grace's cries didn't stop. And Ethan Cole, rancher, widower, once the toughest man in Sage Creek, held his starving daughter in the dark and felt himself break. The rain struck the roof like fists, relentless and angry. Outside, wind howled through the prairie, lashing the cabin with wet gusts that crept through every seam and crack. Inside, Ethan Cole slumped in his chair, boots still muddy from the day, holding his 3-month-old daughter to his chest. Grace screamed, her tiny body curled against him, fists clenched in hunger and frustration. Ethan rocked her, humming broken lullabies. "Please, baby girl, please." Then, knock, knock, knock. He flinched. The sudden noise startled both him and Grace. Her wail paused only for a breath, then rose again. Another knock, urgent, shaky. Ethan rose, arms tightening around his daughter. He cracked the door. Wind slapped him in the face. A woman stood there, soaked to the skin, clutching a small cloth bag. Her cloak hung heavy with rain. Wet strands of hair clung to her cheeks. "Please," she said, voice barely audible over the storm, "I just need a place to stay for the night." He stepped aside without a word. She entered slowly, dripping water onto the floorboards. Then it happened. Grace screamed again, sharp, high-pitched, desperate. The woman stopped cold. Her eyes locked on the infant, her breath caught. Her hand flew to her chest, pressing over the fabric of her blouse, where dark stains had begun to spread. She took a step back, eyes wide. Tears filled them instantly. She began, then faltered. 5 months ago, I gave birth to a boy. He died 2 months later. She bit her lip, trembling. Since then, my body, it doesn't understand he's gone. The milk still comes. Every day, I throw it away. Every drop hurts. Ethan didn't speak. His throat was too tight. She's hungry, the woman whispered. Let me help, please. He hesitated, then nodded. She set down her bag. Her hands shook as she approached. She unfastened the front of her blouse with delicate, practiced motions, her breath ragged. Ethan held Grace toward her. The woman took the baby into her arms like she was made to do so. Her lips trembled. Her eyes never left Grace's face. The baby rooted instinctively, whimpering. Then, contact. She latched, her mouth pressing eagerly. A loud suck, then another. Her tiny body shuddered with relief. The woman gasped. Tears streamed down her cheeks as milk flowed. Her shoulders heaved with silent sobs. Grace nursed like a starving animal, each swallow audible in the hush of the storm. The room filled with the sound, the rhythmic sucking, the baby's soft sighs, the woman's gentle murmurs. It's okay. Eat, little one. I've got you. Ethan watched. His heart clenched. He had tried everything, every bottle, every trick. Nothing had worked. But now, in the arms of this soaked, trembling stranger, his daughter found peace. The woman closed her eyes. A single word escaped her lips. Thank you. Grace suckled slower now, content. Her fists loosened. Her cries faded. Ethan stepped forward and gently draped a blanket around both of them. She opened her eyes, looked up. What's your name? He asked softly. Clara, she said. Clara Bennett. I'm Ethan. And that's Grace. Clara looked down at the baby, who now rested quietly against her chest. She kissed her forehead. The storm still raged outside. But inside the cabin, something warm had taken root, a thread, a bond. Between a grieving woman, a desperate father, and a child who had finally found what she needed most: milk, warmth, and a heartbeat to rest against. The storm passed, but Clara stayed. Not by any formal invitation, not by words even, but by necessity. Grace needed feeding every few hours. Ethan, silent and sleep-starved, never asked her to go. And Clara, with her satchel tucked beneath the cot and her shawl drying by the fire, simply remained. She rose with the baby, fed her while the stars still clung to the sky, and laid her gently back to sleep before the first orange light cracked across the plain. Her hands moved with natural grace, wiping Grace's chin, humming under her breath, folding small clothes Ethan had never managed to wash properly. Ethan watched, quietly. That first morning, he hammered together a second bed frame, rough pine, nothing fancy, but sturdy. When Clara stepped into the cabin from the well with a bucket of water, she saw it already set up in the corner, a wool blanket folded neatly on top. She blinked, surprised. You didn't have to. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. It ain't much, but it's yours while you're here. She smiled, soft. It's more than I had last night. Later, he left a small tin jar by her wash basin. Inside, thick yellow bear fat rendered himself from the winter hunt. A note, scrawled in blocky letters, for your hands. She didn't speak of it, but her fingers traced the jar before she opened it. In return, Clara cooked. Simple food. Beans simmered with a strip of pork, wild onions boiled into broth. She swept the floor each morning and hung Grace's washed clothes over the stove to dry. At night, after the baby nursed and fell asleep curled into her shoulder, Clara sometimes sat by the hearth, wiping tears from her face while pretending to sew. Ethan saw them, but he never asked. One evening, as the wind howled low outside and snow danced like ash in the dark, Clara spoke first. "She was beautiful," Ethan said, unprompted. "My wife." Clara didn't turn. He stared into the fire. "Her name was Mary. She liked to sing when she churned butter. Drove me crazy some days." He smiled, faint and crooked. "She bled too much after Grace was born. We thought she'd be fine. She wasn't." The fire popped. Clara nodded slowly. "My son was named Thomas. He got sick, fever. Nothing helped." She looked down at her hands. "I still dream about him, not his death, just him sleeping, or smiling." Grace stirred in her arms, then settled again. Ethan watched the baby for a moment, then stood and added more wood to the fire. When he turned, Clara had unbuttoned her bodice to nurse Grace, and instinctively Ethan turned away. He busied himself with the flames, saying nothing. Clara noticed. She looked at the strong lines of his back, the way his shoulders carried weight. He never spoke aloud. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't respond, but his hand stilled on the fire poker. Word of Clara's presence didn't take long to reach the town. Sage Creek was small, and nothing stayed quiet for long. She just showed up, alone? From where? Strange, don't you think? 2 months a widow and now living with a man? She's feeding his child, for God's sake. And what does she want for it? Clara heard none of this directly, but she felt it. The stares when she passed through town for cloth or oats, the pauses in conversation. One afternoon, she returned to the cabin with a bundle of soap root and found a parcel of mail left on the fence, no one willing to knock. Inside the cabin, though, the air was warmer. Grace had started smiling in her sleep. Ethan had repaired the window latch to keep out the wind. Clara placed fresh pine sprigs near the bed to make the room smell clean. They said little, but the silence between them changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It was shared. A quiet understanding rooted itself in the smallest things, how Ethan always left water warming for her in the mornings, how Clara folded his shirts even when he didn't ask, how, when Grace cried at night, Clara rose first, but Ethan always followed, just behind, ready with a blanket or candle. They never spoke of staying, but neither spoke of leaving. And slowly, without permission or plan, they began to build something, not from promises or plans, but from small, necessary kindnesses. The snow fell heavier that week, blanketing Sage Creek in a quiet hush. But no snow could bury the voices that began to whisper. At first, Ethan didn't notice. He was too busy chopping wood, tending to the barn, and watching over Grace with a heart too tired to listen to the wind. But when he rode into town one afternoon to buy salt and lamp oil, he felt it. At Miller's general store, a few heads turned as he walked in. Conversations halted. Then someone near the barrels of dried beans muttered just loud enough for others to hear. "Must be nice having a woman under your roof for more than just cooking." Ethan ignored it. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He paid for the salt and turned to go. Another voice, this time unmistakably familiar, cut through the thick silence. "Some folks say she's trading milk for a bed," said Amos Grady, a ranch hand with more bark than work. Shame. Ethan Cole used to be a man of pride. Ethan didn't flinch. But as he stepped outside into the snow, his face was carved from stone. Back at the homestead, Clara was hanging Grace's blankets near the fire. The child had just nursed and slept peacefully in a basket lined with wool. Clara hummed softly, her voice thin and wavering. She didn't see the shadow at the window, didn't hear the approaching wagon until the wheels creaked past, but she heard the voices. Ain't natural, a woman showing up out of nowhere, still flowing milk, but no child to feed. Either she's mad, or she's planning something. She's just staying there, like a wife without a name? The voices faded, but the wound was cut. Clara sat down hard on the edge of the hearth. Her arms trembled. She stared into the fire. Her hands moved to her chest, warm, still full. The reminder of what she had lost. She rose and walked to Grace's basket. The baby stirred, blinked, then began to fuss. "I've got you," Clara whispered, lifting her into her arms. "You're safe, little one. I won't let them take you." Her voice cracked. That night, as wind clawed against the walls and snow tapped the shutters like ghostly fingers, Clara sat awake, rocking Grace. Her eyes were hollow with sleeplessness, her breath unsteady. She had not told Ethan what she heard. She could not. In the early hours, just before dawn, Clara stood. She dressed quickly, wrapped Grace tightly in her shawl, and slipped out into the storm. The cold was bitter, slicing through cloth and skin. Clara stumbled through the snow, holding Grace close, her steps uneven, disoriented. She had no destination, only the haunting thought. If I stay, they'll take her from me. They'll make me leave. I'll lose her, too. Grace began to cry, louder, desperate. "Hush, hush," Clara sobbed, her own voice trembling. "Please, baby, please." The child's wails pierced the silence, her breath catching from the cold. Clara dropped to her knees near a thicket of trees, shielding the baby with her body, her hair soaked through, her shoulders shaking. Her arms wrapped tighter, too tight, her mind blurred. "They don't know, they don't understand. You're mine, you're all I have left." She rocked forward and back, whispering nonsense, tears frozen on her cheeks. The wind howled, the baby cried. And no one knew she was gone, not yet. The wind howled like a wounded animal through the bare cottonwoods. Snow swept across the plains in violent bursts, erasing tracks within minutes. Inside the cabin, the fire had burned low, and the silence was unnatural. Ethan stirred from restless sleep on the floor beside Grace's empty cradle. His hand reached for her instinctively, and found only cold wool. Then the silence hit him. No cooing, no soft breath, no Clara. His eyes snapped open. "Grace?" His voice cracked. He bolted upright, heart pounding as he scanned the cabin. The blanket was gone. Clara's shawl, too. The front door stood slightly ajar, snow curling in. A sick fear gripped his chest. He didn't stop to dress properly. He threw on his coat, yanked on his boots, and saddled his mare with shaking hands. "Please, Lord," he muttered, teeth clenched, "let me find them." The storm had swallowed most of the world in white, but he forced the horse into a gallop, scanning the snow for any trace, footprints, fabric, movement. They couldn't have gone far. Minutes felt like hours. Then, through the swirl of snow, he saw it, an outline against the side of the old hay barn, long abandoned since the roof caved 2 winters ago. He slid off the horse before it fully stopped and ran. She was there, Clara, curled in the crook of the wall, her back pressed against splintered wood, shawl wrapped around a trembling bundle. Her hair clung to her face, her lips blue. She rocked forward and back, murmuring words he couldn't hear over the wind. "Clara," he called. She didn't respond. "Clara, it's me." She looked up, wild-eyed, and clutched the baby tighter. Grace's cries had turned into hoarse, broken sobs. "No one's taking her," Clara whispered, eyes wide. "They'll say I don't belong. They'll send me away." Ethan knelt slowly, careful not to startle her. "I'm not here to take her," he said softly. "I'm here to bring you both home." Tears streaked down Clara's cheeks. "She's not mine, but she feels like mine, and I couldn't lose her. Not again." "You haven't," Ethan said, voice thick with emotion. "You saved her, Clara." He shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders, then gently cradled both her and the baby into his arms. Her body was stiff, trembling, but she didn't resist. "You're not the woman who took something from me," he whispered. "You're the one giving her life." The words hung in the cold air. Clara gasped and then broke. Her shoulders shook as a sob escaped, raw and guttural. She buried her face into his chest, clutching his coat, clutching Grace between them. "I didn't mean to run," she cried. I was so scared. They say I don't belong, that I'm nothing." "You're not nothing," Ethan said, resting his cheek against her damp hair. "You're the reason my daughter's still breathing." The baby whimpered softly, then fell into exhausted sleep against Clara's chest. Ethan held them both as the wind roared around the barn. He didn't care how long it took. He only knew one thing now. He wasn't losing them. Not tonight, not ever. Snow still clung to their coats as Ethan carried Clara and Grace through the cabin door. The warmth inside was faint, a flickering fire half smothered in ash, but it was home. He eased Clara onto the edge of the bed, gently peeled the baby from her arms, and cradled Grace close for a moment. The little girl stirred weakly, then nestled her cheek into his chest with a sigh that pierced straight through him. He crossed the room and laid her into her cradle, but not the old one. Beside the bed stood a new cradle, smooth pine wood polished by hours of his rough hands, each corner sanded soft, edges rounded with care. It had taken 3 nights of sleepless work by candlelight. He'd planned to give it to Grace for her 4th month, but now he realized it belonged to both of them. Clara looked at it, eyes wide, lips trembling. "You built that?" Ethan nodded. "For her. For you." Clara lowered her gaze. Her hands trembled slightly in her lap, clasping and unclasping. The silence between them was deep, but not cold. He walked back to the hearth, added a fresh log, and stoked the fire until the flames licked up strong and golden. Then he turned back and crossed the room in 2 quiet steps. He crouched in front of her, voice low. "You don't have to leave," he said. Clara looked up, startled. "You don't owe me anything," he continued, eyes steady. "But I'd be a damn fool to let you walk away without saying this." He reached for her hand, rough fingers brushing hers. "Stay." Clara's lips parted, breath catching in her throat. "Stay and be her mother. Not just for tonight, not just until spring, for good." Clara shook her head slowly, blinking back tears. "Ethan, I'm not whole. I lost my baby. I still wake up, thinking I hear him cry." Her voice cracked. "I look at Grace, and sometimes I see him. Then I remember he's gone, and I'm terrified. Terrified I'll lose her too." Ethan tightened his grip on her hand. "That fear? I live with it every day, every damn minute since Ruth passed." His voice softened. "But Grace, she's here, because of you. She sleeps now, because of you." Clara looked toward the cradle. Grace was curled like a kitten, one fist by her cheek, her breath even. "You didn't steal her," Ethan said. "You saved her." Tears slid down Clara's cheeks. She didn't speak. "Whatever it is you're carrying," he whispered, "you don't have to carry it alone. Not anymore." The wind howled outside, but inside the fire cracked steady and warm. Clara reached out with trembling hands and cupped his cheek. Her eyes searched his, full of grief and longing, and something softer, hope. "You really want me to stay?" Ethan's voice was firm. "I need you to stay, but more than that, Grace needs you." Clara's breath hitched. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." "You're already the strongest woman I know," Ethan said, brushing a thumb across her knuckles. "You've already done the hardest thing in the world, given love when you had every reason to shut it away." Clara leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll stay." Ethan exhaled, shoulders sagging, like something heavy had finally slipped free. He stood, gently pulled the quilt over her shoulders, then sat beside her on the edge of the bed. Clara turned her face toward the cradle, where their girl slept, full and warm. And for the first time in a long, long time, she felt like maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning. The wind had shifted by noon, sharp and dry, curling dust off the ridge behind Ethan's ranch. Clara sensed something was wrong long before the first boot touched the porch. Ethan stood outside, sleeves rolled up, splitting kindling with a steady rhythm. Grace slept inside, warm against Clara's chest. Then came the hooves, 3 horses, men with hard faces. One of them, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, dismounted first. He didn't bother with pleasantries. "Cole," he said, spitting into the dirt, "time's up." Ethan didn't pause his movement. He set another log, split it clean. "I don't reckon I know what you mean," he replied evenly. Oh, I think you do, another man said, stepping forward. He wore a town deputy's badge, but Ethan knew better. He hadn't worked a lawful day in months. That loan your brother took before he ran off? It's on your land. That makes it your debt. Ethan stood upright, wiped his hands on his trousers. My brother's choices don't bind mine. You know that. But the land does, the third man sneered. And we've got papers to say so. Clara peered through the window, heart pounding. She clutched Grace tighter, her breath shallow. We ain't here for talk, the scar-faced man said. You pay up, or we take what's owed. Ethan glanced at the barn, then at the cabin, Clara's shadow just behind the curtain. His jaw tightened. You're not taking anything, he said, voice low. Not from this house, not from that child. A laugh snorted from the deputy. You gonna stop us? One man with a tired horse and a baby on your porch? Ethan stepped forward, calm and deliberate. You think a man won't fight harder when he's protecting the only thing he's got left? The scarred man reached for his belt. That a threat? No, Ethan said, eyes steady. It's a promise. From the corner of the porch, Ethan grabbed something wrapped in oilcloth. He pulled the fabric free, a hunting rifle, well kept, the stock worn from years of use. Inside, Clara gasped. She stepped back from the window, whispering, Please, don't let it happen. The standoff held, 3 against 1, but Ethan didn't shake. Then came the sound, a single cock of the rifle. Ethan didn't raise it. He didn't need to. I've got no quarrel with men doing honest work, he said. But this is stealing. And if you cross that line, you'll answer to more than just me. The deputy hesitated. His eyes flicked toward the horizon, where a few townfolk had started to gather, drawn by the noise, the tension. One of them, old Mrs. Doherty, whispered to her grandson, That's the coal ranch. The baby lives there now, and the milkwoman. The scarred man spat again. You'll regret this. Maybe, Ethan said, but I won't regret protecting my family. There it was. Family. He meant it. Clara, watching from the shadows, felt her knees go weak. The men shifted. The weight of witnesses, of doubt, pulled at their confidence. The deputy growled, This ain't over. But they turned. One by one, they mounted their horses, boots thudding against stirrups, and rode off in a swirl of dust and cold. Only then did Ethan lower the rifle. Inside, Clara sat on the floor, tears running freely now, Grace asleep in her arms. Ethan stepped through the door, dirt on his boots, chest heaving not from fear, but from something harder, relief. She stood slowly. You're hurt? He shook his head. Not today. Her voice broke. You called us your family. Ethan looked at her, voice quiet. Because you are. Outside, a boy from town ran back down the road shouting, He stood them off! One man! Protected the whole place! And just like that, the town began to see Ethan Cole, and the woman with milk-stained sleeves, not as strange charity cases, but as something more. Survivors, protectors, family. 3 years had passed since the night Clara knocked on Ethan's door. The winters had come and gone, painting the prairie in frost and fire. But the little cabin on the edge of Sage Creek had stayed warm, kept so not just by logs in the hearth, but by the quiet, enduring fire of a new family. Grace was 3 now. Her laughter rang through the garden like a bell, her small boots kicking up dust as she chased a butterfly past the rows of late summer squash. Her dark curls bounced with every step, her cheeks red from the sun and joy. Clara stood by the fence, one hand resting on the gentle swell of her belly. She was 7 months along now, and her face glowed not just from motherhood, but from peace, earned and tender. She watched Grace with a smile that held both joy and ache, the memory of what was lost and what was found. Ethan joined her from the barn, a spade in one hand, a small sapling in the other, a white fir, its roots wrapped in damp burlap. You ready? He asked. Clara nodded. Let's plant it near the fence, where she can see it grow. Ethan knelt by the earth, Grace bounding over to them. What is it, Papa? She asked, eyes wide. It's a white fir sweet pea, Ethan said, brushing her curls back. "It'll grow tall and strong, just like you. Can I help?" He handed her the little trowel. "Start diggin', then." She plunged into the dirt with glee, Clara laughing softly. Together, the three of them worked the soil until the hole was just right. Ethan lowered the sapling in place, packed the earth around it. Clara stood beside him, her fingers brushing his. "What made you choose this tree?" she asked softly. Ethan looked at her, then at the sky, already streaked with pink from the setting Sunday. "White fir's stubborn," he said, "tough against the wind, holds its green through snow and storm. It survives." Clara nodded slowly. Ethan turned toward her. "So do we." He reached for her hand, his voice quieter now, meant only for her. "If the snow keeps falling and this tree keeps standing, then so does this, us, this family." Clara's eyes welled. "That's our promise?" He smiled. "That's our promise." Grace clapped. "It's our tree!" "It is," Ethan said, lifting her into his arms. "Yours, your mama's, and mine." They stood there a while, the wind rustling through the grass, the horizon gold with the last light of day. Later, as the sun dipped low, Ethan sat on the porch rail, Grace curled up at his feet, her head resting against his boot. Clara leaned in the doorway, one hand at her back, the other on her belly, watching her family as if she could store the sight in her bones. Ethan looked up at her and held out his hand. She took it, their fingers lacing easily, as if they'd always belonged together. He looked down at Grace. "Did you know," he said, "when you were little, you didn't want any milk but hers?" Grace giggled. "Mama milk?" "The best kind," Clara added, kneeling to kiss her daughter's forehead. The stars began to peek out one by one. The prairie lay quiet. The fir tree stood by the fence, its needles catching the moonlight. And inside the cabin, etched into the wooden beam above the hearth, were three names. Grace Cole, Clara Bennett, Ethan Cole. Not born of blood, but chosen. Every day, deliberately, tenderly, chosen. Not from duty, but from mercy. Not for survival, but for love. And as the western sky burned one final gold across the hills, their story ended the way all true love stories do, not with an end, but with a promise. Not by blood, but by choice. Not by debt, but by grace. A father, a mother, a child. They chose one another to live. If this story touched your heart, if you found yourself holding your breath in the storm, or wiping away tears as Grace found her mother, then you already know. Love doesn't always ride in with thunder. Sometimes it knocks in the rain. Sometimes it comes with trembling hands, a baby's hungry cry, and a man willing to stay. In the wild, untamed heart of the West, it's not always blood that makes a family. It's courage, it's grace, it's choice. And this was one love story of many. If you believe in stories where love heals what loss broke, where strength is quiet and loyalty runs deep, then don't ride off just yet. Hit that hype button. Subscribe to Wild West Love Stories for more tales where hearts find each other across the dust and wind. The prairie is wide, the fire's still warm, and somewhere out there, another story is just beginning. We'll be here to tell it. Come ride with us.